Welcome to lecture number 11 of this series where you will learn how to vibe code the best way. Well, in the past 10 lectures, you learn a lot about Git, terminal, you install your stuff. Now it's the time to go through a few very quick best practices of vibe coding, and then we'll start building vibe stage. So let me quickly show you what do I mean by these particular topics. The very first one is to use a dictation software. So basically, I'm using Super Whisper. It's an important part of vibe coding to dictate, like use a dictation tool instead of typing. It's much easier. You can ignore this part, but it's important to use it. Try it. If it was not your thing, then don't do it. So basically, if you may have noticed, I use this dictation tool to write the code. So when you're in this situation, when the AI agent is not there, you need to press Command-Shift-I to get it back. And here, for example, if I write something like, if I press Control Space and I just keep talking, it's much easier to talk about a feature. You'll see it in a few lectures later when we talk about a lot of things, and then it just is much easier to talk instead of like type. So this is one tip that I really would like to carry forward. And if you like, you can do that. Since you're using a Mac, or if you're using a Mac, then there is this microphone button on your keyboard. You can press that, and then there is this other dictation tool that comes off the shelf from MacBook. Although this is not the best dictation tool, and you may need to see if this is your something that you like. I'm not sure why my microphone didn't work right now. Another important tip is that give instructions clearly. So if I want to build something, I would want to give instructions exactly if I'm going to give it to an intern. Step by step with a lot of context in mind. Because if you don't give the instructions clearly, the LLM will assume that part, and that's when it's called hallucination. For example, if I want to build, let me clean this area here. If I want to build something like the vibe stage that we had, let's actually pick the vibe stage project, the first project that we did that had this animation. Cursor first project. Let's open it in Cursor. And also let's open it live so that we can do some changes. Okay. So for example, if I want to make the number of emojis a little bit. So the best practice is that you be precise and be clear with your instructions. There are too many emojis. Can you make them only 5? This is a good example. The bad example would be that there are too many emojis, and then the number 5 would be set automatically by the LLM. This is a very simple example, but when we start working, then you'll see the complex examples emerging, and then I'll refer back to this kind of being clear with your instructions. Another part that I really would like to emphasize on is to be atomic on your feature requests. For example, if we go back here, let's say if I want to give it a title, and at the same time, I'd like to get back that multiple different sizes of the emojis, and at the same time, let's say, make the background color black. Those are 3 different features. This is a simple example. It may work, but this is a bad example. Can you please change the background color to black, make the emoji sizes of different sizes, small and big and medium, and also give it a title, call it Vibe Stage. Since I said it is an easy to manage project, it's a very simple concept, the LLM will understand it. But the best practice is not to complicate LLM with too many features, because it can happen that it will hallucinate in between. But most importantly, if you keep them simple, then you can git stash, the command that we learned earlier. You can easily go between the two features. So now it at least got one thing wrong, the title, or at least it forgot to add the title. But that's what I meant. Like, don't overcomplicate it. Keep it one small feature at a time. This is something very interesting. We're getting there. We already started with this approach. What do I mean by RDD? Before knowing that, let's see what is TDD. Test Driven Development. This is a method of writing code in the world of pre-AI era. RDD is also a method that's not so famous. It's called Readme Driven Development. So a test-driven development in software, so that it knows what I'm talking about. You write the test, and then it fails, and then the first step is like you write the test, and it fails. It's basically red, in the red color, and then you make the test green by writing the actual software that satisfies that test, and then you keep refactoring. In this way, you write the best code that you can. What I want to do now in the era of software is to go with README driven development. So you have seen that I have written the README first. Now, if I do this, I say that, can you please implement this in the best way possible? I didn't say anything else. I just said, please implement this with the best way possible. It already picked the stuff. So it's creating a React project, and it's going to go on and on and on. We will do the same approach when we start building this project, especially in this section, in the full stack Next.js section, because I just saw that it picked a React. I'm not going to continue doing it like this. I'll do this README-driven development in a great detail. So another very important part is using git stash when you get stuck. Imagine if I went into this route, okay? I went into this route and I installed stuff. I did something, and that something was very badly implemented. And the solution is not satisfying. I cannot get that thing done. The easiest way would be to git stash and then restart everything from scratch. When you're restarting, make sure that you press that button so that it kind of like refreshes the history of whatever it worked on. So that's a very important one. And git stash is this command that you and I were working on, which basically removes all the changes that it has created before. It keeps going. I will just stop it for the sake of time. Let's go back to our checklist. Then we've got the screenshot feature. Sometimes when you are stuck into a program, a bug or something, let's actually make a bug here and do not fix it here, and run the project, which we already have it running somewhere here. And then you may multiple times need to come to the so-called developer tool, right-click, and then inspect. It will show you a lot of things, but the tab you almost every time need is this one. So when you have a problem, this problem is an extremely simplified problem, but when you have a bug, we'll see this a dozen times when we start building Vibe Stage. What I want you to do is like take a screenshot of the entire screen, especially with the bug visible, and then come over here and then say that, like paste it literally in the chat, and then say there is an error. What it will do is it will pick the error, it will find out, oh, it's in line number 20, and oh, there is an equal sign missing, and then it will put the equal sign, and your software will start working again. So that is very important to use your screenshot tool all the time. Another method that I use usually for my double checking is that I ask the LLM itself to double check that feature. For example, before this, we implemented a few features like the title, the background, the emojis, and so on. Can you double check if that is done properly? So this approach is very, very powerful, especially when you are building complex software and the logic of the software or that atomic feature that you're building is so complex, and then the LLM will start going through this checklist. Sometimes it finds it that it's not done properly, and then it puts a cross, and then it will go and fix it. And in very complex software that I build usually for my clients, SMEs and big companies, and then I even do it the third time. I say, I see, I have the code review, and I have found out that we use something um, that may have a recursion problem. Can you double check that one more time, please? So I do this kind of an approach, and it usually, with this new context, it finds problems that in the initial execution it didn't find it, and then it goes on and then fixes it. Another approach that I really like is that I use ChatGPT as the ChatGPT output becomes an input to cursor. What do I mean by that? Let me open ChatGPT here. So let's say if I want to build one small little feature here, if I click on it, it goes big, for example. Can you please explain to me how can I click on a moving emoji in a browser? It's an application that I already built. I don't know how to implement this feature, which is like if I click on it, it goes big. Each time I click on it, the size of the emoji starts increasing a little bit big. So try to do the following things, please. Explain it in great detail in English, and then give me a sample of the code. How should I implement this? So you take one LLM's output, and then you feed it to the other LLM, which is Claude in our case. This one. By default, it is auto, but if you turn it off, then you can see that it is Sonnet 3.7, which is Claude, but having it auto is the best way because then it switches the LLM whenever needed. So just to make the point, I have here all the details. I just literally copy it like this. Again, it's a very, very simple thing, but in my case, when we start building, it will be a very complex concept. Especially with this vibe stage, we will have concurrency, we'll have limits, we'll have to scale it for my workshops. Probably we'll have like 100 people joining online. So we need to make sure that it runs, we'll run tests and so on. So therefore, you will see it in action. So this is one method that I want to share with you so that later on, when we go through it, you are in this approach. Okay, I'm not sure if it understood that I wanted it to do something, so maybe here's a summary of double checking this. Okay, it is double checking it. Your explanation is on the spot. Here's the English summary. Okay, can you implement this? I just forgot to mention that. Can you please implement this? I forgot to tell it that, can you please implement this, and then copy paste. So you can also do it in the next message because it already remembers that feature of the thing. Since we kind of emphasize so much on this clickable emoji, it even changed the title of our application. So you can imagine how much of context you can give it with minimal instructions. Why do I not give that instruction here so that I have like a fresh browser window somewhere else that I can brainstorm with, and I can change things in here. Once the final outcome is ready, then I take it to Claude. So let's see if that thing was implemented. So here, oh, it just created one emoji, but at least you get the point. If I click on it, it gets bigger. Anyways, so that was just one method that I use usually, and it usually works very, very well. So the last important, not the last, but the third last, we have two more to go, is a temp folder. It's a little bit technical, especially when you have like a Git project. This has a Git project. Git has a feature called git ignore. Since this is a Git project, I'm going to refresh this, and I'm going to ask the LLM to, can you please add a git ignore file into this project and add /temp as a folder. So the /temp, I didn't get the /temp properly. It should be like this, as a folder inside your git ignore file. So we will definitely need this. So therefore, let's do our git stash, git commit, git push things. I'm going to use my shortcut key. Sorry, this is not the right project. My first GitHub project is the right one. Okay, so now I have in my project something called git ignore, and that means it's going to ignore tracking the folder called temp. And if I create a folder called temp, you will see that it grayed out. The reason it grayed out is that whatever changes happen inside that folder, let's say I'm writing a feature1.md, this RDD development method, Readme Driven Development, this is not going to be tracked by Git. We studied Git status before, right? If I do Git status, I won't see anything. Why? Because Git is ignoring that part. Git is ignoring that folder. Now I have a good feature to do this. Can you please explain to me how to implement fireworks, or let's say confetti animation in this project? It's a very simple project where the emojis are moving around. Time to time, when the number of emojis increase to 10, I should see a confetti animation going on. Can you explain this in great detail? It's a Next.js application. Try to explain it with some small sample codes, and also put some information about npm packages. Which npm package should I use, and so on. So this is one method that I use, especially with MD, like Readme Driven Development. And I forgot to mention that it should be saved inside this file, which I can do right now like this. I drag and drop it, and then I say, please save all of the above in feature1.md. And this way, then it creates like a big context for me here, similar to the context that I said, like I will implement something or I will brainstorm something in ChatGPT, bring it here, but in this case, it's all in here. I will also try to ask it, because I see that it didn't explain it in plain English. can you please also explain it in plain English so that this feature is super, super clear to someone? And meanwhile, I will teach you something else. Whatever npm package that it is installing, go to your browser, type npm in the space and then the name of the npm package, and then you can see the npm package. How good is that? The number that you want to follow is the weekly downloads, 2.3 million. That means it's a very good package because it has been used by a lot of people, and the last published was 2 months ago. Some packages are pretty much mature. They do not need to go through a lot of updates, so it's okay if this last update is long time ago. And you can usually find these things as a demo on the page. So this is something that we'll implement in our Vibe stage project. Anyways, so let's go on, and then you see that now it has a lot of details. And when I start implementing it, I can do this, remove this, and then I can say that, can you please implement the confetti animation feature, read all the details from, and then I drag and drop this thing from the temp folder. This can be also a piece of code. For example, here I can have like a script1.js. It's a JavaScript code, and this JavaScript code does something spatial, and then I can mention something like, well, you can get the concept of how you should write this function from, and then that from is the JavaScript code that you drag and drop. So that's a very powerful feature to kind of like keep your code somewhere that the LLM can easily refer to using that @ sign. Okay. We have only a couple of more parts. The next one is a little bit for technical people. Also, you will become a very technical, good developer over time. Imagine if that script was here. We did some changes in that script append, and we did some code trying to find some script here. Or I'm going to just write here just a simple application that adds 2 numbers, something like that. Now, if I have done some script, I showed you guys how to see the changes of the current status, not only from the terminal that you can do get status, yes, get diff, yes, you can see the changes, but also from here, when you click on this one, then you can see the change. You click it, you can see it side by side. Try to ask questions about that change that it did. Try to make some overall judgment when you start learning coding in more detail. And the best would be that you take a screenshot of that part where you have doubt about. You go to the LLM, and then you ask it, paste it here, and then you ask it, can you double check if this function is actually doing it properly? What I intended with this piece of code was to add 2 numbers. And then the LLM will know the screenshot or the get def, and then it will try to analyze and then talk to you. And then it will say yes or no, or it will find a problem before actually committing the changes to your GitHub repository. So this is a very important part, that you keep an eye on the get def, or the difference between the files that you change, and then ask questions about that particular one. The last one is test extensively. What I mean by that is like not testing it with web, not only with mobile, but the feature itself. Try to, every time when you're running something, try to test it in a great detail. Like for example, here we saw that it just basically removed the other emojis. And I can go and tell it to put the emoji back and explain the shortcomings. And once everything is ready, then do your git commit, git push feature so that you can freeze that one piece of work, and then you go to the next piece and the next piece and the next piece. So if I find more good practices during this course, or let's say when I'm done with the rest of the courses, even in the future, I will leave some more tips. But for now, those are the tips that I follow on a daily basis, and I want to share with you guys. And good luck vibe coding. See you in the next lecture.